last week, the White House announced that a small number of U.S. Special Operation Forces were going to be dispatched to Syria as part of America's strategy against ISIS to train moderates against the caliphate. Officials insist they're only there to train, not to lead the charge. But is more American involvement a good idea either way? Joining me now, it's former Texas Congressman and host of the Ron Paul Liberty Report, Dr. Ron Paul. Dr. Paul, welcome back.
Thank you very much. Nice to be with you.
So what is this administration trying to do in Syria? What do you think they're doing?
Well, one thing for sure, I don't know whether they know what they're doing. It doesn't seem to come across very well if they do have a plan. But they're just escalating. They're involved. I don't know what their goal is. They don't even know what the entry strategy is, let alone the exit strategy. But it's expanding. It's a pretense. You know, here we have a president that was going to end 2 wars, and now he's going to leave with probably 3 wars going on. So it's a real mess. But it is escalation. It's serious. It jeopardizes our national security. It jeopardizes our lives, and it jeopardizes our financial situation. So the idea that there are going to be troops on the ground means that it's a serious change in policy at this moment.
I agree. I think they don't know what they're doing, and I think it's very dangerous. I think, you know, that halfway sort of middling, waffling, trying to straddle both worlds and make everybody happy, I do think it puts us at risk. Now, what would you do as president? When would you get into a conflict like Syria?
Well, I'd stay out of it, but if I had to deal with it, I would say that it's time to come home. You know, I lived through the 60s. I was in the military, and the tragedy was that we elected Nixon to end the Vietnam War, and 30,000 Americans died afterwards because nobody could put their foot down and say no to come home, and then we came home. And this isn't nearly as tragic, but it could be. It could get much worse. But there's nothing wrong. But you'd have to get support. You'd have to counteract the ability to of the neocons to propagandize, because they go out there and say the end of the world's coming. The end of the world's coming. If you say bring the troops home, you're un-American. You're against the troops. And you know all that nonsense. But you know the troops ought to come home. I used to say in the debates, we just marched in. Why don't we just march home? You know, what's the big deal?
No, there certainly is a lot of propaganda on the right from people like Senator Lindsey Graham and others who want to see a protracted war there. And, you know, they use scare tactics like if Iran and Syria get together, they're going to create this hegemony in the Middle East. What do you say about that? Does America have to be involved? Does it put us in a position of weakness if we're not?
No, we certainly don't have to be involved. If somebody feels compelled, they at least ought to consider doing it more legal. You know, maybe have the Congress participate, maybe a declaration of war or something like this. But to just allow our presidents to do this is the real crime. It's a crime that people let the Congress get away with it. You know, a couple of years ago, when Obama wanted to start bombing Syria, he couldn't get a resolution passed in the Congress, and the legislature, the parliament in England wouldn't give their authority to go in, but they do it anyway. You put a brake on it, and then they go do it, and then we let our guard down. So it's a matter of getting the majority of people to oppose it. Our big problem, from I think yours and my viewpoint, is that conservatives don't think that it's a conservative position to, be a little bit reserved about spreading our military and spending the money. Eisenhower tried to warn us about how dangerous it was. And I think we serve the interests of the military-industrial complex, and that has a lot to do with it, too.
All right, well, let's shift a little bit to Paul Ryan. He has succeeded John Boehner as the new Speaker of the House. He says he's a supply sider and a deficit hawk. But what will he do for libertarians? How do you think the House is going to be under Speaker Ryan?
Well, it's going to be the same old thing. He's not going to be libertarian. You know, what I think is comical in a way is that he said he read Atlas Shrugged, and the far left uses it against him. Oh, he's a far right winger. He's a Randian and all this. And he's not libertarian. He's not a good conservative. He's an interventionist. He's almost the opposite of a libertarian because he's militarily interventionist. He's supported by the military-industrial complex. I didn't get a lot of noise or help from him opposing the Federal Reserve. And if you look at his voting record, his spending record is bad, and he's always voted for these budgets. I mean, he supported all the Republican positions on health care, No Child Left Behind, the prescription drug program.
Yeah.
And then he was part of the group, to get this passed, this recent budget passed, and increased the national debt to $20 trillion. And anybody thinks he's a conservative, they're kidding themselves. But I'll concede to him, he's a nice and decent guy, but that doesn't mean you'll have nice and decent policy. I know a lot of nice people in the world. It doesn't mean they should be Speaker of the House. But you're saying that you love him. No, I'm just kidding. Dr. Paul, thank you. He sounds great. Sure thing.
Dr. Paul, thanks so much, and hopefully we'll talk to you very soon.